So I'm going to show you again the conditions that are treated by GAPS. This is honestly a condensed list. There's so many things that people have successfully treated, but these are the main things. So read through those again real quick. Can I have a raise of hands of someone, of the people in this room who either know someone who has one of these or has one of these things themselves? Wow. Every single person. Okay. Just throw some things out that you know people that have. Psoriasis.
Food allergies.
Food allergies. Autism. Allergies, asthma, eczema.
All of the mental health disorders that are listed up there. Listen.
Bipolar.
Yep. These
IBS.
are IBS. Super common. Reflux. Headaches. Arthritis. Yep. We are familiar with these things, and it's really sad because who wants to live this way? My second question is there treatment that either you or the people you know that they're getting, is it working to address the root of the problem and bring recovery? Yeah. After better understanding the root cause of these conditions, doesn't it make sense now why people are feeling so miserable and why the approach to these issues is really fundamentally flawed and it's not helping? Okay, I'm going to do a quick diet comparison just to show you. There are several elimination diets, and some of you may even be on an elimination diet. Basically, you're finding a food is irritating symptoms and you take it out indefinitely. Okay? So here's some of the elimination diets that you've heard of. GAPS is different than an elimination diet, and I'll explain that in a second, okay? GAPS is more similar to, if you've heard these names before, the specific carbohydrate diet, primal, paleo, Weston A. Price and Nourishing Traditions. GAPS follows more of those principles. It'd be more along those lines. But GAPS is a healing diet, okay? This is the primary difference between GAPS and elimination diets. The goal of the program is to heal the gut, which will in turn bring healing, and these foods may be able to be introduced back into the person's diet. It will take care of the food intolerances. Something really unfortunate that I've been reading a lot about is an alternative diet for autistic children or children with behavioral disorders has become the gluten-free, casein-free diet. And you may have heard about this in the news. It's pretty controversial, but a lot of kids are finding success with it. But the problem is the level of healing is about here, whereas the level of healing that GAPS can provide is here, because you're actually healing the gut, whereas gluten-free, casein-free diet, you're just removing those things that tend to be a problem for autistic children, but they're never addressing the root cause of the gut imbalance that's there, that's causing that problem. So the GAPS diet goes a whole level deeper and actually heals the gut dysbiosis, the imbalance of the gut flora, and the child is no longer autistic. Here's some important reminders about the GAPS diet. We're going to get into the nitty-gritty here, okay, of what we're doing. You have to read this book. This book is incredible. It's by far the most fascinating book on health and explanation of our bodies that I've ever read. Starting without being prepared and knowing what you're doing, you could have a lot of die-off or constipation or hunger pains, things that you could avoid if you are well prepared. Being patient. Please remember this is going to be a slow process. You didn't get into this shape, over a couple days. It took many years. And doing the GAPS diet requires a time commitment that you're willing to be patient and work towards being healthy again. Starting slow. depending on where you're at. Transitioning to this is a big deal. This is a completely whole foods diet. There is not processed foods in this diet, so that means you're in your kitchen and you're cooking every day. So starting slow and working your way up to that, there's a lot of different things that will say, okay, in month 1, this is what you need to do. And it will prepare you so that you can start. Like if you want to start in 3 months, it will get you up to that point so that you can feel more prepared. And this is talking about that too, being prepared, doing some trial runs, trying to do some fermented foods or some bone broths to get these staple things down so that when you start, you're not so overwhelmed. What should I expect? Sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
This is a challenging thing, and it might be one of the hardest things that you ever do. Sacrifices of your time, your money, your social life, not going to certain parties maybe, or emotional energy of just investing into this thing. Being misunderstood and judged. And you need lots of patience. It's not a quick and easy thing to get sick, and it's not a quick and easy thing to heal either. The GEPS program consists of 3 different things: diet, supplementation, and detox. Those are the 3 elements of the GEPS program. So what is it specifically? What are you not eating? It is sugar-free, no sugars, except in the form of fruit and honey. Those are the things you can eat on the GEPS diet. And you would be amazed at how sweet something can be with just fruit or honey in moderation. Grain-free, not gluten-free, grain-free. No corn, oats, rice, quinoa, none of those alternative grains that have a lot of health benefits. All of those are taken out on the GEPS diet. And lactose-free. Not casein-free. You can do milk products, but lactose-free. This is excluding all commercial dairy products because it still has lactose in it, except cheeses and butters, certain cheeses. You can have homemade dairy that has been cultured properly, like the kefir or yogurt, things that you can ferment at your house and make sure that you've done it for a long enough period that the lactose has actually been eaten up by the beneficial bacteria. So these are the main things. There's some other vegetables that are excluded because they're so starchy, like sweet potatoes, parsnips, yams, things like that. That's all listed online and in this book, exactly what you can eat and what you can't eat. But these are the 3 things that they're excluding: sugar, grains, and lactose. And to just to remind you, it's not because these things are bad in and of themselves, besides sugar, which is just plain bad. But the other things have nutritional value. It's not because, oh, this is bad, let's put this on the list that you're never going to touch again. It's because of what it's doing inside your body and your gut not being able to break it down. We're going to talk about sugar for a minute. Because we all need the reminder of how harmful sugar can be. Heart disease, cancers, kidney disease, liver disease, shortened lifespan, plaque in vessels, diabetes. Tumors actually live and feed off of sugar, and so do yeast and pathogenic bacteria. That is like their favorite thing. I mean, I see why. It's wonderful. Dental decay and bone loss, even in children, sugar causes. Hyperactivity, behavioral problems, lack of concentration, violent tendencies. These are all things that in medical journals they have found sugar to be a cause of. Very addictive, likened to drugs actually. Getting off of is similar to getting off of drugs. Gallstones, formation of gallstones, adrenal fatigue. Significant immune suppression. Even after like 30 minutes of eating something with sugar, your levels of your immune activity suppress. And it stays suppressed for about 6 hours. So if you eat sugar for breakfast, maybe in your latte, and for lunch and for dinner, you're immune suppressed all day long. Great. Exhaustion, irritability. The average person in this country consumes 170 pounds of sugar a year. That's ridiculous. A quarter of our calories are coming from sugar. A completely void substance that's not only not giving us anything, it's actually stealing from our nutrients. It takes 56 molecules of magnesium for 1 molecule of sugar. You eat 1 molecule of sugar and it demands of your body 56 magnesium molecules, which is probably why everyone's magnesium deficient in this country, because we all eat 170 pounds of sugar a year. Sugar is really the primary cause of every chronic disease, is a primary cause, I'm sorry. It's indicated in almost every chronic disease. It's something that we are very close to our hearts. We love our sweet treat. We just have an emotional connection with sugar. But it's really killing us. It's a toxin. So GAPS is a whole foods diet. Read your labels. Here's a label. We've all seen, I mean, they're just long and everything. That's actually a label to baby formula, which you probably don't drink, but just wanted to show you that. Very few packaged things are GAPS friendly. Sugar and grains are hidden in almost every processed item. You need to check your nuts for oils and avoid processed oils. Check your dried fruit for added sugars. All of those little things that they love to sneak in there to make it taste better. The more processed something is, the more nutrients are taken out. So when you see the word enriched or refined, that's all processing. And they're taking out good stuff that was supposed to be in that item and not putting, well, in the enriched things, they're putting synthetic chemicals back in to try to help, but it's not helping. So traditional diets. GAPS is based on many principles of traditional diets. When I say traditional diet, I mean diets that were pre-industrial revolution and when we started doing processed packaged things. So these would be diets of like primitive tribes that still exist today, or Eskimos, or places all around the world have their own traditional diet. And a lot of cultures still use a lot of those elements, such as kimchi in a Korean diet, or miso in a lot of Asian diets. There's traditional diets that some cultures still hold to, but for the most part, the American diet doesn't have anything traditional left. It's just all made in factories. So here's some of the traditional diets around the world, things that they have done for health, and these are all parts of GAPS. Bone broths and stocks, cultured and fermented items, yogurts, cultured creams, vegetable blends like kimchi, sauerkraut, and drinks like kombucha, animal fats. 50% of your calories on the GAPS diet need to come from animal fats, which is shocking to many people. Organ meat, such as liver, kidneys, those things are so nutrient dense. They're very healing, these things, and they really are superfoods, and we need to bring them back into our culture. Heal and seal. This is the primary goal of the GAPS program, to heal and seal the gut, so it's no longer a source of problems. Addressing the gut, in turn, takes care of so many other problems systemically. The leaky gut needs to be sealed so that it is no longer a source of constant toxicity and dysfunction for the body. Heal and seal, that's the goal. Loads of fat. You use these liberally for your GAPS patient or yourself. These are the fats that you eat. No vegetable oils, no margarines, real good fats. The brain is actually made up of 60 to 80% fat, around 65% of it being saturated fat. If you aren't feeding it, what do you think your brain's doing? It's not working correctly. The immune system and the digestive system also require a large amount of fats to function properly. So the more fat in the diet, the quicker you'll heal. We're going to talk for a second about the saturated fat. Okay? When you think of saturated fat, a lot of people, probably the first thought is, oh, that's the bad fat. So since the 50s, there's been a very intentional attack on fat. Just like the war on germs, there's a war on fat. And this has said that saturated fat and cholesterol clog your arteries, and they're going to kill you. They cause cancer, they cause everything else. Actually, The research has actually shown that processed carbohydrates and sugar are the things that are causing our bodies to degenerate and that are causing heart disease. But so many people feel like the healthy diet is like the vegan diet or the low-fat diet with like little Nutri-Snacks. Healthy diet is a real food diet, period. It's made up of real food that human beings were meant to consume. And the saturated fat myth has caused more problems in people as people have bought into this and bought this margarine, vegetable oil laden products that are increasing inflammation in their body and causing so much chronic disease. So just rest assured that saturated fats have been eaten for centuries by human beings. They've made up a large parts of many traditional cultures' diets, and that we need to be consuming large amounts of animal fats. That's exactly what the brain and gut need to heal. And it tastes fantastic. Okay, so there's two parts to the GAPS diet. There's an introductory part, and there's a full. The intro is short term. It's intense, but it's short term. This is what you start with. There are 6 different stages, and if you look in your packet, you probably grabbed an intro chart. Those are the 6 different stages. I shouldn't have had you look at that yet, because now you're not going to listen to me. Progress through these stages as your symptoms subside. It's kind of subjective because you're moving on as soon as you feel like your body's ready to move on to the next food. They give a lot more detail in the book about that. It takes around 3 to 4 weeks. Some people do intro for a couple months, but on average it takes around a month, spending at least 3 days on each stage. That's the bare minimum. And that's the introduction diet. This is where a lot of healing happens. Once you finish that, you enter into the full diet. The full diet includes every food that's allowed on the GAPS diet, starting slow with some things like beans and seeing how your body does with them. There's only a couple beans that are GAPS friendly, but there's a full list in here. And that's all the foods on that list are allowed in the full diet. So after the first month or so, you're eating a full GAPS diet. You stay on this for the remaining time. If it takes you a year, you stay on this for a year. If it takes you 2 years, you stay on this for 2 years. And time for healing is very individual. People want to know, what's it going to be for me? But no one can tell you that. Our bodies are such individual. Yes, we're unique. The amount of healing that needs to happen in our bodies is just so unique to our own issues, our own flora, and everything that's going on inside of us. Just like with emotional healing, you can't prescribe exactly how it's going to be. I do want to say that some people choose to start the full, the bottom one. They start that for a couple months. They get used to cooking that way, and they get used to not using all their processed stuff. And then they go back to intro. And this is not a bad thing if you have to start that way, because those first couple months that you're on full, you're going to have a lot of healing to begin with, but then when you go back to intro, you're going to really push your healing along. So if that's something that you feel more comfortable with, starting with a full diet and then going back to intro, that's a really good option too. But the introduction diet is essential if there's any serious digestive problems or any serious issues going on in the person. Don't just do the full diet. That's a temptation for some people, but if you can carve out that month of your life and do the introduction diet, you're going to see a huge catalyst for healing in doing that introduction diet. So here's that chart, and here's some pictures of food that you can eat on intro. It would take a lot of details to explain all these things and how to do this in an introductory seminar that I can't really do, but there are so many resources to teach you and to walk you through that process. And Yvonne, with her training as a GAPS practitioner, that's something that she's learned how to walk someone through this process that wants to find healing through the GAPS program. And my schedule, I'm also available as my schedule allows, just to share my experience with you and help you. Real quick, dairy introduction. For anything that you think you may be sensitive to in the past, you think you are sensitive to, it's very simple. You have to do a sensitivity test. You just take a small amount of it. Say it's egg yolk. You take a small amount of it, you put it on the inside of your wrist, and you let it dry, and you go to bed. When you wake up the next morning, if it's red and inflamed, you're too sensitive to it to introduce it right now. So just wait. It's different. Sometimes waiting a couple weeks is all it takes. But first you do the sensitivity test for dairy. And then, as you proceed, there's two different options. You can either introduce these things during the introduction, ghee, whey, butter, yogurt cream. We have some ghee back there. We can show you what that is. It's butter. But you can introduce these in order and see how your body responds to them. Or some people just decide that they want to wait longer before introducing dairy because they think they have a problem with it and they want to wait till more healing's happened. But Dr. Natasha states that most people who go through the GAPS program can handle very well cultured milk products, which is what these things are. These don't have lactose. They have very tiny amounts of lactose in them. If you don't have a clear allergy to milk, you can and you should introduce ghee starting in intro. That's what Dr. Natasha says. And ghee is wonderful. It tastes just like butter. It is butter. It's just the process of how they cook it down. Okay, die-off. When pathogenic bacteria die in your body, they release their toxins. And if there's too many toxins for your body to process, you're going to start having symptoms. And these symptoms are called die-off. So you start taking out sugar and grains from your diet, and your bad guys don't have anything to eat. And you're also taking probiotics in, which are killing the bad guys. So you start to have all of these things dying in your body, and you're going to have symptoms as your body's trying to process those toxins out. Everyone's symptoms are different. The two times that you'll experience die-off the most is during intro, especially the first couple days. My husband and I started and we thought we'll be fine, and the next day we woke up and we felt like a truck hit us because it was such severe die-off. There's ways to deal with it. It's not the end of the world. It feels like the flu. That was just a couple days for us. But all that bad stuff's dying, so it's exciting. And then anytime you increase your probiotic dose or your probiotic food, you may notice some die-off. Even well into it. Like you might be feeling some die-off right now from eating those probiotic foods out there. Every time I eat some probiotic food, I feel a little bit of bloating. And that's because what's happening in my gut is bad stuff's dying. It's like war, remember? Die-off symptoms vary from person to person. Fatigue, flu-like symptoms, rash, headache, or anything that brought you to the diet in the first place could be die-off. So if you have eczema, your eczema may flare up. If you have rashes, if you have headaches, those things could all flare up during die-off. There's detox measures to help you deal with this, and just resting and letting the body take care of it makes it, you'll make it through. Stool. This is an exciting chart. Stool is a very helpful tool that tells you what your gut is doing. It's very diagnostic. Okay? This is the Bristol stool chart. I think it's awesome. You're probably thinking, oh my gosh, what's the right number? And from what I've read, it's a little bit controversial, but from what I've read, around 4, give or take, is normal stool. Stool that's been in for the right amount of time. And the extremes are totally abnormal. And if you have stool at the extremes, you have some gut damage and some gut issues for sure. So stool is a great indicator when trying to decide if you should move on to the next stage or not in the introduction diet. Stool changes often indicate the body's not ready for the new food. So you start introducing avocado, which has fiber in it, and you start having diarrhea. Your gut is telling you, I'm not ready to introduce this food because I can't process that fiber yet. So stool is very helpful. On the GAPS diet and off, you need to be paying attention to what your stool is telling you about your gut. I put this little chart in your packet. These are things that you need when you start intro. You don't need much to start. It's pretty simple, the foods that you eat in the beginning. And then intro and on, these are just some staples that I always have in my pantry that I'm using frequently. Really yummy foods. Here's some kitchen supplies. The ones with the star, I think, are the essential ones. It's hard to do gaps without those. And the other ones are really good to have, but it's possible to do it without them. That's also in your packet. So the second part of the GAPS diet is supplementation. The necessary supplements are a therapeutic grade probiotic. The Bio at top, that's the probiotic that's recommended. It's very strong. It's got 14 strains, I think, and you start off very slow with this, whether you're doing GAPS or not, because the die-off from it is intense. I'm still at a quarter of a capsule, 5 months in, because I should be introducing it probably a little bit quicker, but my symptoms are so severe when I do it because it is so strong. Like, this is potent, which is good. You need that. If you have bad bacteria in your bodies or your children's bodies, you want it to be taken care of before it develops into other problems. So the therapeutic grade probiotic is absolutely necessary. If you can't commit to doing that, it's, you can do GAPS without it, but it's pretty important. Cod liver oil is your source for omega-3s, which we are all deficient in because we don't really eat fish anymore. You definitely can eat fish and all seafood on the GAPS diet, but cod liver oil is giving you the omega-3s, and the vitamin D and vitamin A also in a natural form are in the cod liver oil. You can take it in capsules or in a liquid. And then the stomach acid. People with GAPS problems actually have low stomach acid. And people think it's the other way around. They think, oh, I have reflux, I must have so much stomach acid. It's actually the other way around. And that's because these pathogenic guys, even Candida yeast, is a huge suppressor of stomach acid. And it's suppressing the stomach acid, which is compounding the problem, because then the bad guys can flourish even more. Because that stomach acid is there for a purpose. It's there to keep the bad guys from, making it down on in. They should be killed in that stomach acid. So you need to take this stomach acid. Some people do fine without it, but she recommends the stomach acid, and we feel like it's really helped us. Essential fatty acids. This is an essential supplement, but we decided we weren't going to take it because what it's made up of, the brand we got, was a lot of nut and seed oils, and we just decided to eat a lot of those on a daily basis ourselves.